This is a mission-focused life with Tim Olafson, co-founder and executive director of Another Child Foundation. Up next, Tim will speak with this week's special guest, offering special insights on how you can live a mission-focused life.
Welcome, everyone. This is a mission-focused life, and I am your host, Tim Olafson. And I'm so glad you all have joined us today. And I hope this podcast helps you along your faith journey. Today, we have a special guest. We have Todd Long, who is the guidance counselor at a middle school in Greenville, South Carolina. And just like to welcome Todd to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hey, we first got to know each other, and it was almost like an encounter back in 2006 when I went to Romania. It was my first international mission trip, and there was actually two teams. You worked for Buckner International, Buckner, Romania at the time. Is that correct?
Yep. I was working with them, kind of helping them. I wasn't actually serving with them, but I was helping them lead teams. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And I remember there was two teams. I don't know how you got so many people over there at one time, but there was a team from Tennessee that you and John Hogg led. And then there was another team that Beth Brinkmeyer or Beth Bateman at the time and Dave Jolly led. And I was on that team from the Illinois, and we had a couple connections there, but that's how we first met. And it was fun to kind of get to know you. But anyway, so when we get into the questions and stuff, we're going to talk about Romania and have some fun discussions on that. But tell us a little bit more about where you are today, your family, and a little bit about you today.
Sure. I appreciate it. Well, where am I today? Right now, I am working back in the public school. This has really been my career with branches out into the mission world, and I try to keep one foot in there all the time. I've been back in public school about 10 years, and I enjoy it. Working as a counselor. Have 3 daughters, 2 in college, 1 in middle school. About 7 years ago, I guess, I was divorced, and but my daughter, who lives with her mom, we live in the same neighborhood, so I see her almost every day. So I'm very, very involved with their lives. I was laughing today, as a matter of fact, just last night I had to move her around a lot of different places. So I spend a lot of my time with my kids doing stuff, even though some of them are older. We're very involved in things, and just really when I'm not working, I really try to spend a lot of my time being engaged in ways that I can serve the people of Romania, because that's just my heart.
Yeah. So how did Romania? How did it all start? How did Romania become? Yes. You know, how my passion is that country has a way of grabbing people's hearts, and how did it do you?
Well, I tell you, Tim, people have asked me many times over the years, how did you pick Romania? And the answer always is, I didn't pick Romania. Romania picked me. And the quick version, if I can do that, I'm not good at quick versions, but the quick version is, I was 28, grew up in the church, but became a believer at 28. And within a year, the Lord started really putting his finger on me about missions. And I had nothing to go on. I had no background in any of those things. I was just learning how to even be a believer, but it didn't go away. And then I didn't really have any idea what that looked like. I didn't know what he wanted me to do. I didn't have any idea really even what listening to him sounded like or looked like at the time. But one thing that started happening, 2 things that happened. I knew a girl from my job who had gone to Mongolia for 2 years to be a missionary, and that really impressed me. And the second thing was, around that same time, everywhere I went, and this is pre-internet, so you weren't Googling things, you weren't looking on your cell phone. It's the old days, And everywhere I went, every magazine I picked up in a waiting room at the oil change place or whatever, every time I flipped on the TV, it was something about Romania. And I had to conclude that he must be trying to get my attention, and it must be about Romania. And I had to go. Now, this is where my own kids laugh. They just like, what? I had to go to the public library and find one of those big atlases, because I didn't know where it was. I had to find it on the map. It's in Europe. That's all I knew, because I couldn't Google it on my phone because we didn't have that technology. So I went to the library. I found it on the map, and that's how it started.
That's cool. Yeah, because they have similar stories. And really, the only thing I knew about Romania when God called me there, because I say the same exact thing. I didn't choose Romania. Romania chose me. I
Right.
knew of the gymnasts, and I knew the Dracula. I knew Transylvania.
Dracula. Dracula
And
and
I knew
orphans was all
Nadia
I knew.
Comaneci. Those are the only two things I knew about Romania.
I kept saying, isn't that the place where there's all those orphans? That's all I knew.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so, but as soon as people started researching about Romania, that's usually one of the first things that come up is
Yeah,
the orphan problem over there.
sure.
So tell us how you got over to Romania. How
Okay.
you became a
Well,
missionary?
I started out doing short-term summer trips, and that's what it started. I felt like I've got to go, and I thought, well, that'll probably be difficult, and no one will want me to go. So I was kind of hoping that was the way it was going to go down. And when it all was said and done, and I called, because again, there's no internet, and I picked up the phone and called
The
the last,
rotary phone.
right. And I called the last agency. I had a list of people, and that's a whole nother story, how God provided me a list of mission agencies, because I didn't even know that, But anyway, I did have a list that I had gotten that he had provided me because I didn't know to look for it. And I called and I talked to him, and it was with International Messengers, which is the organization that for all these years I've worked with. They answered the phone and said, yeah, and I said, well, I'm a teacher. I need to go, but I got to go in the summer. I can't build anything. You don't want me to build anything, that kind of thing. And she's like, great, no problem. I'm like, what? Great, no problem? No problem at all. We'll get you there. And I was like, oh, come on. It's got to be a little bit harder than that. And that's where it started. I went that summer and I did a camp in Hungary first because I was already there. And I did a camp in Romania. And that was in 1995.
Wow.
And it was still pretty rustic. And I knew I was at the right place. When we crossed the border, or we were at the border between Romania and Hungary, going into Romania, and we're on a train, and got the team, and we crossed, and I know we're in Romania just because the flag, I knew what the flag looked like. And I'm standing there, and I'm just in awe because I was 29, getting ready to get married. I'm from this little town in South Carolina, and I'm thinking, how in the world does that boy get here?
Yes.
And I'm looking out the window, and just as clearly as probably the things he has said to you and many other people, he said, you're coming back.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I hadn't even gotten off the train yet. Let's slow down. The whole process for many years, I was going, slow down, slow down, slow down.
Mhm.
And he was like, no, I got a plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got to Romania then, of course, did several camps over the summers, would go back and go back and go back, and then really knew the Lord was calling us to go over and live there. And it was a process to just live through it and be confirmed that's what we were supposed to do. And 2003, my wife and I moved over with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And it was snowing and it was cold. And we knew a few people in Timisoara because I had been there so many times for camps and things. So we knew some people, and she knew some of those people. So, but that's what happened. We moved there in 2003 in January, very cold and very snowy winter. And, everybody was like, you can't do that. You can't take those kids and da-da-da. I was like, well, I have to, because that's what God's told us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we went, and we were there for 6 years living in the country.
Yeah. So in Timisoara, which people who know a little bit about Romania, that's where the revolution. So in 1989, when everything was getting chaotic over there, it was actually in Timisoara where the revolution started, to where the overthrow of Ceausescu and all of that. So share a little bit about that, what you learned there, and some of the living there.
Yeah, Tim, I learned a lot. It would take days, sometimes to tell all the things over the years. But one of the biggest things about living in Timisoara, not only was with the revolution having started there, because it's the westernmost city in the country, it had a very different perspective and attitude than the cities further east towards Russia. The further east you go, the more Russian the people become. And Timisoara had hundreds of years ago been part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It had been Hungarian, so they had a lot of, when I say progressive, I don't mean that word like we use it politically now. They thought much more ahead than the people in other parts of the country. Very, a lot of universities, a lot of college students. So it was the city during communism that the dictator hated because of where they were located. We were, 30 minutes from the Hungarian border. They could always pick up Radio Free Europe and things like that.
Okay.
And he hated it. And they could never scramble enough stuff so that they couldn't pick up things. So that was the city where they knew more than the other people. They knew what was really going on in the rest of the world. And he didn't like that. So the people were affected by that in the fact that they were always, they kind of considered themselves, educated and a little bit more knowing of the Western world. But one of the thing I learned the most, I think, living there was how so many people I met that were older, retired, the sadness of their lives that they were never allowed to have a vocation that they wanted. They were given a job that they were required to have. We knew a guy who lived in the building that we lived in, and he was retired, and he had been a factory worker, steel factory, 150 degrees, terrible. He wanted to be a businessman. That's all he ever wanted. And he was a worker in a factory. And his wife told us that he had been miserable every single day of his life because of that. And so he was retired, and he would put on an old suit and carry around a briefcase. And it was kind of cute, but it was also sad.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I learned, was so many stories from so many people whose lives had been altered and they weren't given any choices.
Yeah. I think that's the lesson we need to learn now. So as this country evolves into, don't want to get political here, but into more depending on centralized government, or at
Right.
least be headed that way, at least our mentality seems to be thinking that's more comforting. We need to understand that does have consequences, and we can learn from the past. And Romania would be a good example of that. And that one gentleman might be a really good example of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 2003, you move over. What are you doing? What kind of work are you doing when you get there?
Yeah, I learned in the process of moving there, we were called to serve in Romania. And that's all I ever knew. People would say, "What are you going to do?" And I have no idea what we're going to do. But I have a feeling if God will make all this happen, he'll find something for me to do once I get there. There's just no doubt about it.
Let me do this real quick. So did you go over with an organization, or did you just go over on your own?
No, we went with International Messengers,
Okay.
and that's the organization I had been with, and I still do short-term work with them.
Okay.
And if I get back over there again, I'll probably be with them. I've been associated with them since I was 29, so that's a long time.
Okay.
So we were with IM, and they had some staff in the city, and they have some still now that I'm in contact with pretty regularly. But I knew that we would find our spot. International Messengers, or IM, one of the things that attracted me to IM is they allow you to find your spot. And for some people that may not work, but for me it was fine. I knew we were going to be fine because I'm okay. I'm able to do that. I was going to just say this too. I learned that you're either called to a specific place, and that's what we were called to, a specific place. You're called to do a specific type of ministry. I work, I build things, or we dig wells, or we, whatever, or you're called to work with a certain population. Well, we were called to a specific place, and that call to Romania to serve that country has been part of my life since I was about 28 or 29. And so what we did, the first 3 years we were in Timișoara, and we worked with an organization called Student Venture, which was part of Campus Crusade. And we worked with high school and college students, and it was a blast. I mean, mostly they were at our apartment all the time. We had a lot of rallies and all kind of, all the kind of high school stuff. We went to high schools a lot. I was in and out of Romania. Especially, there were 4 high schools in Timișoara that we went into. I mean, we could have gone to others. We just didn't have time. I was in and out of those 4 high schools several times a week. They'd let me come in and do anything I wanted to do because I was an American. They wanted an American to come in there and talk, and we didn't come in and do evangelical things. What we did was we came in and did things that they just don't do normally. We'd talk about, how our brain works or what our personality is, those kind of catchy things. And they would invite them to events off campus that we would have.
Right.
And that was that's what we did. And we really, it was a very relationship based situation. And that, to me, that's where my heart is. My heart is in relationship evangelism. It's not in standing on the street, giving people things that say things. It's in getting to know people and meeting them at the need of where they really are in life, And so that's what we did. And then we moved to Bucharest, which is the capital and the bustling 4 million people, and it was quite different. But we worked at a private Christian school that was English speaking there. And I was a teacher and an administrator there for 3 years. And we worked with people from a lot of different places there. And it was a good fit. And to my 2 children that were a school age, they went to school there. While we were there, my 3rd daughter, Sophie, was born in Bucharest. So that's sort of what we did. And then after those 6 years, we came back to the States. It was just time. We needed to, our kids needed it. It was just they needed a change, and it was a good change for them. But it's a big, huge part of their lives still to this day. And the older 2 have been back many times with me in the summers.
Yeah. So in 2009, when it was ending, was that another call for you? Was that something that God revealed to you, that this phase of your life was over, or was it your family that kind of helped you with that? Or
I didn't know at first. At first I thought, okay, this is over. This is done. Even after all that had happened and then living there for 6 years, I don't think I still understood that God had put a lifetime call on me to live there and work there and serve Him.
Okay.
I just don't think I understood that, because I looked around at a lot of people who had come and left, and I thought they all just started back into the world and doing their thing, And I thought, okay, that's just what you do.
Yeah.
But what was going on inside never went away. So it wasn't during the move. It was maybe 2 or 3 years after the move that I realized, oh, no, wait a minute. Just because I'm not there doesn't mean that has gone.
Right.
And so, started going back and doing stuff and like I said, just very involved, and hope to, my plan when I'm finished with this gig is my kids are a little bit more grown. I'm moving back.
Yeah.
And I've told them, y'all can bury me over there if you'd like to.
Yeah.
It's my heart, and serving the people. But no, it was a big, I did not, none of us, I mean, my wife at the time, none of us expected to move back.
Yeah.
When we moved there, I moved with the intention that I was 40, that we were gonna send the kids off to college from there, and I would die there. I moved there. People would say, how long are you going to be here? And I was like, forever. And that's what I thought.
Yeah.
God had different plans, but He didn't change His plan for it to be part of my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Because He embeds into that heart, and He does those for reasons, because that's what people have passions on, and that's what He wants to use. God wants to utilize people's passions and skills, and obviously He did that for you, and it's still in there, and He's gonna keep that heart moving, and it's gonna be pretty cool. So mission focused life. That's kind of what this podcast talks about, and what we try to do is try to help people live a more intentional life. So how do you define the word mission? And I know a lot of times people think it's to go to Romania, or to go some exotic place that God calls you. But how do you define mission?
I think mission is really the simple act of living life and demonstrating Christ's love to people with the skill set and the relationships and the circumstances He's given you. That's really what I think it is. It's not all about airplanes and passports and big events and pictures and pizza parties. It's about relational living with people every day. That's what I think missions is. I really do.
Yeah. I love that relational aspect of it, because if we're not in relationship with people, we're just doing superficial things. We need to have roots, and just look at the way Jesus, he groomed 12 people to change the world. And so He had 12 very good relationships with people. And then even He went down to even 4 people that He was most close, there 3 that He was most closely attached to, because He knows relationships are that important. So a defining moment, what what was that moment in Romania? Because okay, let's do it this way. The question I want to ask you, and you kind of referenced it when you were sitting on that train.
Oh, that was a
And God
moment. Yeah.
revealed to you that
Yeah.
you're coming back, and here you are, just this young man. And how in the heck did I get here? And I had that same experience. So, uh, so how does someone know? How does someone know? And God is calling them, whether it's to travel, because I believe that's can be a catalyst to a person's
Oh,
spiritual walk.
yeah.
I've seen lots of people, and you have too. You could probably share
Mhm.
testimonies of people who have went on trips and come back and are now
Absolutely.
doing work. So what can you kind of share on that as far as how do people know if it's a defining moment or not?
Well, first, I think that we probably all experience our defining moments differently.
Oh yeah.
And the closer in tune you are, to yourself and how God speaks to you, you're going to be closer to understanding a defining moment.
Yeah.
But I also think in general, a defining moment is going to be one that just, it doesn't go away. I could just as clearly today know what it's like to be standing on that train looking out the window right now. It was a defining moment. And I think defining moments don't go away. That's what makes them defining. And if we're looking at, is God asking us to do something? Well, I think the first mistake a lot of us make, and I've made this mistake too, is that we just assume God is asking certain people to do something. But in reality, he's asking all of us to do something. It may not be as dramatic or as drastic when they look at it as living in another country. It may be inviting your next door neighbors over for dinner one night. But nonetheless, he's asking us all to do something. And I think the only way we can really start ascertaining, is God calling me to do something, is to work on that relationship with him.
Yeah.
And learning to hear his voice and recognizing the things that he keeps putting in front of you, just like I recognized Romania was everywhere. If he keeps putting things in front of you, he's doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to keep our eyes open. What we're trying to tell the listeners is there's got to be an awareness of what God is trying to convince.
Right.
Because it could be near. He could have been trying to talk me into taking that step to do a mission trip for years, and me just not being in a close enough relationship and hearing his voice in different ways, or not recognizing the things that he's putting in front of me every day, whether it's people, magazines, or whatever. So just having awareness about it, an intentional awareness of what God wants you to do in your life.
Yep.
So you spent 6 years in Romania. I know you and John Hogg. I'm not sure how you and John Hogg came together, but I know you guys are
Romania,
a dynamic duo. And
absolutely.
So what were some of the best moments, if you could share one or maybe two stories of moments that just really moved your heart, maybe had some humor to it or something, but just something really.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, as far as John goes, we had a lot of moments together. John and his wife, Casey, had lived there for about a year, and they lived down the street from us and in an apartment, and we went to church together. So we got to know each other, because we're Americans and all this stuff. And we did a lot of things together. And over the years too, even after he had moved and we were still there, he would bring teens and I would work with him. And then even after that, we would take teens over. But some stories, boy, I tell you, there's one that one story is a sad story, and then the other, but I want to tell it real quickly because it was sort of a defining moment in a lot of ways. My wife, her name was Lisa, and Lisa is a nurse, and we had a girl who kind of helped us with our kids sometimes. She lived in the village, and she came in one day in tears, and she was in high school, and we were like, "What's going on?" And she just was a wreck. And a friend of hers from high school had an accident at the train station and fallen under a train and had 2 legs and 1 arm taken off.
Ooh.
Now this was like, let's see, my oldest is 21 and she was probably 5, 6. So they weren't prepared for this at all there. Long story, but when she finally came out of a hospital months later, Lisa was able to work with Johnny Erickson, Tata's organization, and get a custom-made electric wheelchair fit for her with the handle on the right side and everything, and that was a huge, huge moment for all of us. Even my kids, we all remember that process. Even that one day we went to some like the store and met the guy in the parking lot. He finally, it took months, we finally got the wheelchair brought over, and we went out to their house and gave this family this wheelchair, and their dad put her in it, and they're just in tears, and it wasn't any more than the fact that we just knew who to email, but that was huge. And the reason it was huge was we saw how it was, again, that intentional, relational. And the dad, he kept asking us, why are you doing this? Why are you helping us? He was thankful, but he didn't understand it. He was poor. He was a worker in the village. And we told him we did it because, well, first off, we loved Andrea, the girl who was her friend. And we loved Jesus. And Jesus told us that he would help us get them a wheelchair. And that's why we did it. And that's, to me, what missions is about, whether it's about a wheelchair or a meal or whatever else, But that was huge. Now, on a much brighter notes, there's a little village near Lugos called Susani, and out in Susani is where we have a friend, Ovidio, lives out there, and his wife and kids, and he's a pastor. And we spent countless Friday nights and Saturdays and weekends out there, and we used to take the city kids, from Timisoara out there, and they would do stuff with the village kids, and there's quite a divide there, but and John and I would go, and our wives and our kids and everything. But we used to go out there, and we spent so much time. And my heart was literally, I think, broken and reformed in those villages out there. And that's where my love for village ministry came from. Going around, and we would feed them and give them groceries and do all this stuff and all those things, And but fun times and fun stories. I tell you, there's just so many funny things that happened out there. And when John and I would be together, it was pretty funny. And I think one of the things, excuse me, one of the things that made it really work a lot of the time still is just, I'm pretty funny, and I don't mind jumping in there and acting like, making a fool out of myself, I guess. And so really enjoyed just doing, most of the time it was them, teaching me words that I shouldn't say, and I didn't know I shouldn't say them, and having me do things, and just a lot of that. But I love it, and it's just relational, and it's a lot of fun. But we just had so much fun out there. And I guess for me, again, to bring all that to a place was I learned to just love the way Romanians live.
Yeah. I think one of the cool things that a lot of Americans don't realize, and I'm going to say the Christian Americans realize, that it's a combination of who we are as Christians, but also the American aspect of generosity. I know America is always the most generous. So when we go over as Christians who give lovingly and generously, that is such a strange concept to a lot of people. And I've seen it in Guatemala too, and I've seen it in Romania when I go and visit it. They ask that question a lot: is why? Why are you investing time and resources to me when you don't even know me?
Right.
Right. It's very, you might, embellish on that just a little bit as far as why.
Well, one of the first things that comes to my mind is, and it's funny because it goes back to this same person, the guy I was mentioning that had the little briefcase and always wanted to be a businessman and couldn't be. He lived in our apartment building, and his wife was a dentist, and she had been made to be a dentist, but she had loved being a dentist. And actually she was still a dentist, even, now, she had her own office and everything, and she loved it. So it was quite a paradox. He hated what he had to do, and she loved what she got to do. But she was very smart, and she spoke English very well. So when we first moved there and did not have language yet, she immediately took to us because she could speak English, and she loved my kids. And so she spent a lot of time with us. And she was fascinated with us because we were Americans and we lived there and we lived in that building. And, there was so much about it she just could not wrap her brain around. Why in the world would you take these beautiful children and bring them to this dirty country? That's what she would say. Yeah. And she knew, and people would say this, and you may have heard this before. If you're there for any length of time, people say you're either a missionary or you're a businessman. And you haven't tried to sell me anything, so you must be a missionary. That's what they would say. And I go, okay, that makes sense. And so, but Monica said to us one day, she had really puzzled about it, and she'd ask us a lot of questions. She knew where we were coming from, the whole thing. but she also knew that we were just very relational, and we were living there. And she looked at us very seriously one day and said, either this God that you keep talking about is real, and all these things he told you to do, he really is real, or else you're all just crazy. You're insane and need to be put in an institution. That's right, how she said it. And she goes, and I've spent 3 years with you guys, and I see you almost every day, and you just aren't crazy. She says, so that just puts me in a place where I've got to do a lot of thinking.
Good.
So when we moved, I gave her a New Testament in Romanian, and when I gave it to her, she told me, she said, it's funny you would give me this. I said, why? She said, because these were illegal when I was growing up. I said, I know. And she said, I had a Bible when I was a little girl. She said, and I kept it because I thought it must be very important if it's illegal. And my grandmother took it away and burned it.
Mm.
I said, why did she burn it? She goes, she was afraid that someone would find it and we would get in trouble. I said, I understand. And she goes, and I've never let myself look at a Bible since then.
Really?
I said, well, you've got one. I said, so
Yeah.
you need to read it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is things like that, you know, that's the relational part. She spent a lot of time with us, as did a lot of people. And you know, she could not understand why anyone would do what we were doing unless there really was a God.
Yeah. And you don't have to do that in Timisoara. That can be done in our hometown.
Absolutely.
Living by example.
Why did you cut my grass? Why did you bring us dinner?
Exactly.
Because you're either crazy or there's something bigger than you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because we need to do things with love. I mean, this country, typically, we're still, as a country, we're still pretty generous people throughout the whole country. But when you do it with love, when you do it without expecting anything in return, you do it graciously, that attracts people, and it brings it's different enough nowadays to where it makes people question what's different about this person. So living by example. And I'm going to get to the short term. One of the problems with short-term missions, or the thought of missions and short-term mission teams, and we're trying to address this in Another Child Foundation, is that we can't go over as the answers to the problems. We can't go over as the haves trying to serve the have-nots. If you go over a mentality like that, or as problem solvers, we're going to go to Romania and solve some of these kids' problems, then the mission's going to fail right away. It's got to be relational.
Yes.
So, and you've gave some great examples of that.
Yeah, it's very true. I was just going to speak to that just real quickly.
Yeah.
Having been part of so many short-term teams, either on them, leading them, hosting them, just in every way possible, I believe that it's really about having the team come over and work alongside whoever is already working there. You're not there to bring something new. You're there to just be an extra set of hands and hearts for the person who's already there. And one of the things that a good friend of mine who was Romanian, he's a strong believer, he told me right after we had moved there, and I already knew him, we had done camps together, and his name's Cornell, and Cornell said, here you have to be careful. You can't say things like getting saved. He goes, because they're just going to look at you and say, saved from what?
Yeah.
I said, right. He goes, and another thing that you have to be careful about, and it was great advice, and for 30 years I've remembered this. He said, another thing you've got to be really careful about is, he said, you've got to remember that your country is only 200 years old, and we've been here for thousands of years. He said, so you can't come in acting like you got a better plan, because we've been around a lot longer than you. And he wasn't saying that to be, and he was just being, and people will look at you and say, who do you think you are? It's like the 5-year-old coming in and telling grandpa how to do something. Yeah. So he really, probably more than anyone, planted that seed in me of understanding it was all about relationships.
Yeah.
All about relationships. And you weren't there to tell them that the Orthodox Church was wrong, because I don't really know that it's my place to tell them that the Orthodox Church is wrong. He said to me, and then I'll move on, he said, everything just needs to be about Jesus. He said, it doesn't matter if they're Orthodox or Baptist or Catholic. What are they doing with Jesus?
Yeah. That's good. I remember, I'm not sure if it's the same Cornell, but we visited a small village there in 2006 in Tinka. And that was my first experience with extreme poverty. I'd never seen anything like this before. The children who were there, they had this joy about them, but it was poverty like I've never,
Yeah.
hopelessness like I've never
Yes.
seen before. And I still remember the smell, the sights. That'll never leave me, and I always take that
Yep.
with me.
And a family living there, they don't need theology. They need love. They need groceries.
Yep.
They need you to come along and help them and show. And again, to me, it's about showing Christ's love,
Yeah.
Show people that Christ loves them through other people.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a chance right now. We're going to wrap it up here. We're coming to the end of our time, but I'm going to give you an opportunity if you want to, if you choose. Now, I know right now you're doing a special drive to collect some items they're going to end up in Romania. I'm not sure exactly if they're going to be shipped over or whatever, but you're collecting shorts, and you want to tell us a bit more about it if anybody wants to be involved.
Yes.
How they can.
Let me tell you about that. I am always got my finger in a couple pies in Romania at all times, and just the last couple of years, last year, of course, nobody accomplished anything, but from that, the Lord said, just because you can't go right now, it doesn't mean you can't still be doing stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. So what I did, I just looked, there's an organization that I'm working alongside there, and I'm collecting shorts. I'm collecting new or used men's, women, and children's shorts. And a lot of people say, why are you collecting shorts in the middle of the wintertime? Because by the time we get them there, it'll be summer. So you have to be about 6 months ahead, as you well know, in what you're doing. So that's what I'm doing until the end of February. I'm collecting these shorts, and I'm going to send them over, and they're going to use them this summer to give out to the kids. Now, a lot of times too, I have to explain to people, sometimes people get it, but I've lived there in the summer, and it's hot. And you've been there in the summer, it's very hot. And these people are living in extreme poverty. And even though they're very, very poor, we want to, not just with this organization, anytime I do something, we want to give them quality things, because that's Jesus, giving them. If I give them something I don't want, I've not shown them Jesus. If I give them something, or if I give them something I wouldn't give my own kids, I'm not showing them Jesus. So anyway, I'm collecting shorts. Todd Long, you can look me up on Facebook if you want to get in touch with me. That's what I have right now. I don't really have a website or anything right now, but always involved in some different things. Going to do some other things later with them. I've got, again, a daughter graduating college soon, and another one in college. I got a lot going on here, and needed to be here with them. But I am really excited to be back in the business of helping them. My heart's desire, as I probably expressed, is serving the very, very poorest of poor in the villages, and meeting their physical needs. And this organization is a very evangelical organization, and but they believe in showing love through giving them things they need. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm helping them. In the spring, probably going to come up with I said my spring collection, like I'm a fashion designer or something, but there'll be something else. And until I get back, I know you guys are going, and I just, that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Ultimately, like I said, I do hope to get back. And when I'm finished with this, when the Lord says, okay, you can go to the next thing. The next thing, I hope to move back to Romania and spend the rest of my life serving the people in the villages.
Yeah. Hey, so is there a deadline on when you would need the shorts to your
the end of February.
Okay.
I'd like to mail them out, ship them. There's a place in Atlanta that ships to Romania. So it's about an hour and a half from here. I hope to ship the first week of March. So I'd like to have everything by the end of February. My email address is simple. It's toddlong63 at Yahoo. The year I was born, so y'all can do the math. All right. And I'm on Facebook. So if anybody's interested, just get in touch with me. That'd be great. Right now, that's how God's impressed me to serve that country. Been serving and loving that country for a long time. So you see, got a little see behind me. There's a Romanian flag on my bulletin board there.
Into that. Yeah. So what we'll do is we're going to put it on our Facebook page too, your contact information and stuff, and maybe you
Right.
can send me just a little blurb, and we'll get that out so that people can see it there also. So
That sounds great. Great.
all right. Well, anything you want to give, one last tip that you can give someone that you would just like to encourage them to take that first or maybe their next step on what living a mission-focused life might look like for a person?
Yeah, I guess, you mentioned short-term things and getting involved in missions, whether you are donating shorts or moving to live on the field in another country. I mean, missions is any time you're really touching people's lives. What I would say is two things. Every time you are involved on any level in serving others, there's two blessings there. You're going to get blessed and they're going to get blessed. And I say this a lot. If you want to be blessed, then go bless somebody else, because that's how you will get blessed. And the second thing is, if you take a step out of your comfort zone, and it doesn't mean flying to another country, your comfort zone might be going next door and talking to the neighbor in the driveway. That might be way out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
If you will step out of your comfort zone a few times, God will then make that comfortable, and then he'll let you step a little further out of your next comfort zone. And that's the way he'll ease you into getting you involved. And the more you are willing to step out of your comfort zone and obey him, you will find that you will want to step further the next time. And every time you step or don't step, there are blessings that either get given or that don't get given. And there's people who will be served or not served. And so I think about this a lot. Every time we knowingly, or even if we don't know, every time we don't do what God asked us to do, somebody just might be missing out on something that he had planned for them.
Wow.
And that's true. But missions, again, it's just, it's uncomfortable sometimes. And as you well know, it's not glamorous. It's usually hot or very cold. You're usually very tired. You're usually doing a lot of waiting or a lot of hurrying up. But you meet sweet, beautiful people, and you get to just see, not for yourself, but you get to see them reacting to God's love.
Yep. Well, Ted, I just want to thank you for your dedication to the gospel, to relationships with people that God puts in front of you each and every day. And just thank you for your time today. And we appreciate having you on. And just God bless you, and take care. All right.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. And in the show notes, we will have a short link to a survey that you can take that will really help you identify skills and passion that God has placed into you and where you can use them. It's real simple. And when you're done, you can actually receive a personalized mission action plan that you can look over. So until next time, live for Jesus and speak life into others.
This has been A Mission-Focused Life with Tim Olafson. Find us online at missionfocusedlife.com, as well as on Facebook at facebook.com/missionfocusedlife. You can subscribe to the video version of this show on YouTube and the audio version on Spotify, as well as anywhere you get your podcasts.